just come out of the dentist in Exeter, and I am hoping to bump into a very nice chap that I talked to on the first video a couple of weeks ago, the homeless guy who's now hopefully moved into his first flat. So I'm hoping to find him, catch up with him, and see if he got into his home and how that's going for him, because it's his first home in 5 years. While I was looking for Richard, I came across a guy selling the Big Issue. He started talking to me. He just seemed to be happy to have someone to talk to, and I very quickly learnt his situation. We talked for about 20 minutes, and his friend Jane, who, whilst not sleeping on the streets, is in temporary accommodation, but she's been in the same temporary accommodation for 5 years, came up and joined the conversation, and I learnt so much.
£3,000 worth of stuff I collected there.
When I learnt that he had to leave temporary accommodation in Birmingham in a hurry, without even a chance to take his possessions because he was in danger, I just felt an immediate urge to try to help him, at least get his possessions back, because he was talking about just giving them up. He said it had happened to him before, and every now and then that happens. But in the end, I ended up offering him a deal. I would drive him to Birmingham to collect his things if he would share his story with me on camera. So it's Jane and Phil.
Yeah.
Right, listen, it's nice to meet you. Just set myself up for an obligation now, I think, but hopefully it'll be a really worthwhile thing. More than happy to drive him to Birmingham, pick up the stuff. Sounds like it's an awful situation. And see what I learn on the way. I eventually found Richard, who had actually walked past while I was talking to Phil and recognised me and said hi. He was sitting in his usual spot near a cafe where apparently a lot of people buy him a coffee. As I had feared, his story hadn't turned out as he was hoping. But somehow he just looks on the bright side and said it was meant to be, because he now had an even better flat that he would be moving into in 2 weeks, and that he'd signed the paperwork yesterday. I bought him his favourite coffee, a latte with 5 sugars, which I remembered. And we had a brief chat, and I said I would look out for him again next time I was in town. 5 sugars still?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I do remember. And you want a latte, was it? A latte with 5 sugars?
Yes, please.
5 sugars he has.
5, oh he does, doesn't he? There you go.
Thank you very much. The 5 sugars are in it, but it needs stirring. There's a stirrer sticking out the top. Yeah. Cheers, Richard. Well, listen, good luck.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Yeah,
The house.
It's all happening now, so.
Can't believe, you were so excited about that last flat. I can't believe it fell
I know,
through.
yeah. Do you know what? I even ended up like bubbling a bit, you know. The shower room's in the bedroom.
It was, when we spoke last time, it was a real shock to me. It never even occurred to me that without a fridge, eating costs lots more money.
Yeah,
Just never, of course, now you mention it. What I learned talking to Richard last time about how much harder life is when you're sleeping on the streets. He said, you can't buy a big thing of milk because it will go off because you've got nowhere cold to store it. He said, so just eating and drinking costs much more money. Nowhere to keep bread, your bread will go off, your milk will go off, can't keep any fresh food anywhere. Just something that never occurred to me. When I met him, I think it was 2 weeks ago, it was a Wednesday, I think it was. And he told me that he was on a Friday moving into his first flat in 5 years. He even showed me a set of keys, and he said that fell through at the last minute. They went bust or something, but that day he's been offered another flat somewhere, which he says he's signed the paperwork for. So fingers crossed that does work out. And then the other chap, Phil, that I was recording, poor guy got put into, he had to be sent to Birmingham for this accommodation, was promised that it was safe, but it wasn't safe. And he had to just get out to save him, just to be safe. He's left all of his gear up there. I asked him if he would, in return for coming with me and sharing a story, I'd give him a lift up to pick it up next week, just to see what more I can learn. I just think the more we share these stories, the better. Once I was back in the car, on my way to see Sam, I had so much on my mind, and it was just overflowing, and I started talking to the camera and just sharing my thoughts. I could feel the emotion welling up in me, and eventually it got the better of me. I'm already beginning to feel these deep pangs of emotion, of guilt, I think this is probably why so many people just don't want to think about it or talk about it. Because if you stop to think and talk about it, you very quickly realise that there's a sort of moral obligation as a fellow human being that you can't do nothing about this. You cannot go on living a comfortable existence knowing that these fellow humans are languishing in despair, whatever the circumstances of how they got there in the first place, and just walk on by and not help. It's just really hard to do. And so this phenomenon of people just walking on by, which we've all done, haven't we, is actually as much to do with the fact that we subconsciously feel a need to deny the existence of the problem in order to be able to enjoy our own comfortable existence. Because if the moment you stop and engage with these fellow human beings and hear their stories, I don't know if it's just me, but it's impossible to just walk away. So, good news about next week.
Yep.
Either Tuesday or Wednesday.
Brilliant.
I'll be bringing my someone that I work with called Samantha.
Okay.
So we'll have a nice little road trip.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Charlie.
Now, how much stuff have you got? Is it going to fit in the boot of my car?
Literally, it's like a 32-inch TV,
Right.
a few clothes, and a couple of bags and stuff. There's a 9 and a 9 ball, but that ain't necessarily, I can't get it in the car and stuff. So, yeah.
All right, we'll probably manage.
Brilliant.
But no, and I'll be glad to help out anyway.
Oh, thank you so much, mate.
You're welcome. All right, Phil, have a great day. You've got to remember the fact that, you know, some people might go, nah, mate, they're exploiting you. Don't do it. Don't go. It's you know, it's a scam. They're going to nick your kidneys. Because, well, that's why it was important to say this is a deal, right? There's something I'm asking for a return. This is not just a favour. When I left London early that morning, I wasn't expecting to be meeting or talking to any homeless people, let alone setting up a trip to Birmingham to recover possessions. I found myself feeling oddly nervous, but also very pleased to finally be doing something tangible, to be starting to help, even in a small way. But I was nervous. In the next episode, we'll find out what happens when we picked Phil up in the morning in Exeter.